Well, good morning, everybody. If you got a couple extra minutes this morning, I want to walk you through some of just the amazing features in the atmosphere that are going on right now. We're going to look at several different satellite images because this was a fascinating satellite animation from yesterday, just as the sun was setting. So we have a lot of cloud cover over the Great Lakes. We have some intense storms that blew up here in the Midwest. We have the low that has been creeping its way toward Texas, providing some rainfall into areas that have not seen rain, some places well over 30 days down here. We're going to have to watch the Gulf very carefully, by the way, as we go forward. We then see in the northwest a deep low that's spinning up out of British Columbia and Washington, getting here into Idaho and Montana. We got a winter storm advisory on the backside of this in the mountains, which is just nuts. And as I was watching through the very end of this animation, we can also pick up on some wildfire smoke I think would be neat to take a look at. So, I don't know, let's start in the west and we'll kind of head our way toward the east. So in the northwest yesterday, just as the sun was setting, this deep low that is kind of taking shape here, again in the Pacific Northwest, strong winds behind this thing. And as it was curling up here, again, we're watching these waves go over the top of the mountains. Always fascinating to see the cloud waves mimicking the topography of the region. But it was in the valleys that I was really interested on seeing a few different things. So kind of zooming in right here on Washington. Watch throughout the day today as this cloud, high, thin cloud kind of moves out. And if you keep an eye right in through here, you'll actually see what I think is a pretty sizable dust storm. Now, I'm recording this pretty early in the morning here on, what is today, Wednesday. And so I haven't got a chance to see all of the reports yet from what happened yesterday, but it looks as though there was a pretty strong region of blowing dust into this area. So if any of you are here in this, right here in this big section of the Columbia Basin, central Washington, getting over toward like the Palouse, let me know. You could also see down here at the bottom, look at all the cloud, the jet condensation trail down here. Really amazing just to see that blowing in the wind. A very interesting environment setting up here in the west. I then went a bit farther to the south, and you could also see a couple of large wildfires. But one of my favorite things to look at with this high-resolution geostationary satellite data is just the shadows that show up later in the day. So yeah, here's the large fire, one in Nevada, another one down here in parts of kind of the southern rim of the Central Valley of California and the Sierra Nevada mountains. But as I just rock back and forth, you can see the shadows just take shape around the mountains. And of course, you can see the Grand Canyon and all sorts of just amazing features here on satellite. More intense storms in parts of Arizona. Once again, some of these have been producing locally extremely heavy rainfall. But I think the folks that have seen the most intense rain have been in the Midwest. And if you just watch the storms yesterday blow up on satellite, we had a large storm cell that popped right here in parts of Missouri. A couple more back here into Kansas, and a deep storm that blew up in Chicago. And as the sun sets, we can see some pretty powerful overshooting tops, nice shadows coming off of these storms. And I had a few people send me videos. By the way, you can do this at any time. If you've got something really cool in the weather, just email it to me. It's just Eric, ERIC Snodgrass, SNODGRASS @Nutrien.com. That's like nutrient without the T. And I'd love to show your stuff in these videos if it kind of fits into the narrative. So I'm going to show you a couple of them here. The first one was from Steve Eichenberger, a colleague of mine at Nutrien. He was in Kirksville, Missouri. I'm going to leave the sound on for this one. This was pretty intense hail in Kirksville. And Steve and I were kind of texting back and forth early this morning. I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to send you a text at 4 a.m., but he was talking about some of that getting up to golf ball size. And I just pulled up the hail data, the maximum estimated hail size over the last 3 days. And we talked about the big storms earlier this week in this part of Montana getting into southern Saskatchewan. But in the last 3 days, just throughout the Midwest, numerous large hailstones being reported here. So there were some near Chicago, the ones that Steve just took the video of are right here in this part of Missouri. And that's pretty rough go of it. If you just look at the recent storm reports, this is from the Storm Prediction Center. Let's blow that up so you can see a little bit better there. We added another 161 reports from yesterday, and I didn't do this. Let's slide down here and see several from Illinois. We got one in here from near Kirksville, maybe where Steve was. Look, he said he was 10 miles away from Kirksville, but you can see these reports in Missouri, and this is just a great resource that the National Weather Service puts out through the Storm Prediction Center. But some of these hailstones, like this one in McHenry County, Illinois, near Woodstock. In fact, I'm going to Woodstock tomorrow. That'll be interesting. 2.5-inch hailstones. Just amazing to see some of the damage from this. And that is, again, following the storm reports from the previous day, where we had not only very strong winds and large hail, but more wind damage coming out of parts of Minnesota into Wisconsin, and a lot of large storms in the Northeast as well, producing hail reports here too. So this has been a, we don't typically think of late summer as being a time period in which we generate a lot of severe weather, but we've had nearly 400 reports of severe storms just in the last 2 days, or severe storm damage in the last 2 days alone. But I want to come back to these storms that were in Illinois and Missouri specifically, because as they exploded last night on infrared, these storms kind of found themselves along this boundary right here in northern Illinois. And I have, of course, several friends that live in my own hometown and nearby down here in Champaign County. And I had several folks texting me late last night about just the incredible display of lightning to the north. I want to show you one of these videos. Now, this is shot in real time. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear the crickets in the background so they know I didn't speed this up. But take a look at this. This is 24 seconds of lightning looking north towards Chicago from central Illinois. And just to make a comment about this, I get lots of questions about a phenomenon that we've all heard and discussed, especially in the Midwest where I hear it the most, about something called heat lightning. And I just want to be very clear that what happens here is when you see lightning but you do not hear thunder, the reason for that is several different things. First of all, the sound waves from the thunder actually dissipate upward. They bend upward with the decreasing density in the atmosphere, which means oftentimes the sound waves are over your head. The curvature of the earth has an effect on this as well. Plus, sound dissipates, right? We don't hear things from great distances because of the way sound dissipates through the atmosphere. So you can have lightning that's so far away that you see it, but you don't hear it. The light can travel through the atmosphere, but the sound cannot. So this is not lightning generated by like the heat of the day. It's actually lightning, of course, being generated by the ice in the storm. So the ice tumbles around throughout the storm, and you get charge separation. In between that, you create these massive arcs of electricity, some of which can contain 1 billion volts. We've measured some lightning strikes to have over 300,000 amps. And it all happens in not just fractions of a second, but honestly, microseconds. It's incredibly fast how this occurs. Now, again, that was 24 seconds in real time. And so I pulled up some of the lightning data from one of my favorite websites, blitzertongue.org. And by the way, you can join this network. They'll sell you the sensor. I think it's about $500 to buy one. I should do this. I need to get one to get on their network. But most of the lightning strikes, I believe that their sensors are sensitive to is cloud to ground strikes. So when we look at this and we measure 390,000 lightning strikes in the last 24 hours, we have to remember here that most of what you're sampling are cloud to ground lightning strikes. It turns out that daily there are somewhere in the vicinity of about 9 million strikes globally, but that includes all of the cloud to cloud and cloud to air and all these other types of lightning strikes. And so in this particular case, what we're mostly seeing here is CG, and it's just amazing to kind of see that. Now, using Blitzer Tongue's kind of live lightning mapping, I love it that they put it on this beautiful website here. We were watching continued storms today down here in Missouri, Illinois, some up right on Lake Erie, and then right along the Gulf Coast. And these storms just continued in the overnight hours. And I want to bring up an important point about this because you can see where there are storms right now. But if you look at my current precipitation map, which goes through 5 a.m., we're not seeing that rainfall from these storms. And it is raining down here. And just another point of reference here for any time you use my maps, this MRMS data, which I say it's 5 a.m. data. Remember that this is just when the map is published. When I make the map, the data on it typically have about a 2-hour lag on getting the data, all the precipitation in. So in a couple of hours, you'll see at 7 a.m. This will start to fill in a little bit with the storms going through there. So it looks like it's real time, but in reality, there's a little bit of a data lag simply because of the quality control and processing. But what do we have here? We've got that ridge, the ridge that's been sitting in here, the stalled out front, the moisture coming into Texas, that's been well predicted, but just storms firing all along this periphery and getting into the northeast as well, while the deeper low is curling up here now and beginning to initiate the risk of some cold air in the mountains and some snow. So this is just the last 72 hours, and if we zoom in here close, we can see here in the upper Midwest where I just focused some of the recent precipitation. Now, thinking this through, I did get a chance early this morning to read through some of the comments from the last couple of days. I love to read the comments. Please continue to just provide, information. It's fantastic. But I was getting a lot of questions about people getting missed by recent rains. And this is paramount for this time of year, just thinking about who's been getting the moisture and who has not. So in the last 2 weeks, and remember, this data has a full day lag on it. So this was through 12Z, which for Central Time would have been 7 a.m. yesterday, through 7 a.m. yesterday, looking at the total precip and then comparing it to historical averages. So as I was thinking about this, you notice that it's a lot of the eastern half of the country that's been very dry. We expect it in this area, even though we've talked recently about the heavy rains that have come through with the southwest monsoon getting into the Four Corner states. But I want to kind of focus in on this area. So let's look at a couple of regional maps starting in the northeast. Big storms in places, but interior parts of the northeast into the mid-Atlantic, and then take a look at, Ohio, West Virginia, parts of Virginia, Pennsylvania. We've got places that have not seen a drop of rain out of the last couple of weeks. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, remember the huge storm we talked about last week, the 10-incher that came through there? We got some places in here that are, 500-600% of normal, right in that shade of color there. So just the disparity in rainfall is stark across this view of the United States. Going into the southeast, I've had multiple people say, hey, can we get 1 week tropical system to get through here just to give us some rain? Because it's amazing just to think that earlier we were talking about Debbie coming through, producing, in some places 15 to 20 inches of rain. And then since then, the last couple of weeks, it's been bone dry in this area. And I know this is true across many places in the United States, but the most common place I hear the phrase, we're always a week away from drought, that phrase is in the southeast and probably in the mid-south as well, other areas in through here that have just missed out on the rainfall. Now, I'm going to talk more about Texas in a few moments because of some of the changes in the forecast, but let's go back up to the north central United States. And again, across southern Illinois, much of Iowa, this part of Wisconsin, you can see these corridors in through here that have missed out on some of the recent rainfall. Yet what we tend to hear about a lot being reported are the places that are getting the rainfall. So it's important to look at the negative side to this as well. And we're going to come back to the Central Plains in just a few minutes here. But first of all, this is where the pattern's heading right now. We spent time earlier in the week looking at these 3 tropical systems. We talked yesterday about the way that systems keep curling up here, finding their way into the Bering Sea or the Chukchi Sea, or the Gulf of Alaska. We've already suppressed that big ridge. See this? Remember how large it was earlier? It's now gone. We're already seeing the atmosphere kind of regather things around this low that's spinning up out of Montana into Alberta, into Saskatchewan later today, and that's going to be a focal point for some severe weather. I'll talk again at the end about the risk of hurricanes, but we can tell that, coming across the Atlantic here, we don't see any well-organized, African easterly waves, despite the big Bermuda High guiding anything in this area toward the United States. So this is it. This is kind of where we're going to start off the day with our forecast here. We're going to begin with the risk of severe storms. So the first is going to be with the current system leaving, so from Ohio over to New Jersey, that corridor, stretching even back in Illinois and Indiana, where we did know the storms were going this morning. We do have the risk. Then later today, we're going to keep an eye on the Dakotas. This has been well forecast by the Storm Prediction Center. We're going to watch that carefully. Then you get into tomorrow, moves right back over the same area that saw the severe weather recently, earlier in this week. And you can also watch parts of Virginia, North Carolina for some stronger storms. And this is where we get on the 30th. This will be Friday, of course. We see the frontal boundary sneaking through here. And there's the potential for some heavier rains out of this. Now, all hazards weather map this morning about 5 a.m. There's still our region of excessive heat that we're keeping an eye on. So these are heat advisories. And, of course, we have the excessive heat warning right in through here in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, this particular very heavily populated area. On the backside of this, we do have red flag warnings. And there it is. That is, I think, the first time I've seen in a while a winter weather advisory. There's a freeze warning also out for this part of Oregon. Okay, as we watch this go forward, the latest kind of radar data I've got from this morning, if we just look at this animation right up to about 5 a.m., I wanted to see how well initialized the models were. So keep an eye on this. I'll flip it over here, and I actually think that was pretty good. You can see the low, keep an eye here, here, and here. And we've got all of those pieces for the most part. Maybe we're missing out on the kind of the nature of the storms in southern Illinois. But blowing this up, let's kind of watch where the forecast is going to take us by this afternoon and this evening. So this is why we got our eye on this region. and right in through here for the risk of those stronger storms. But isolated storms in the south, there's still more coming up into the Four Corners states. As we play forward, on the back side of this is where we might get a little bit of snow, cold enough for some snow at very high elevation here. So this is late tonight, getting into Thursday. The low begins to deepen as it rolls right along the U.S.-Canada border. We still have that parked boundary and good surge of moisture coming into this section of Texas and Louisiana. But this front by tomorrow afternoon on Thursday is going to continue to press east. And most of the forecasts drag that front out and push it into some decently unstable air with plenty of moisture in it. And this is going to push a large area, I think, right in through here by Thursday evening, right through the Midwest back into the southern plains. So through Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and then getting into Friday midday, which is where we are here, we'll have to watch where this front's going to go. Personally, I'm going to watch it carefully. This will be the first Friday night football game. I love going to the football games mainly. I love football, but my daughter plays in the band, and I love watching her play in the band. She's such an amazing young lady. But anyways, this front's going to come through right about this time where we'll be watching a lot of Friday night football across the Midwest. We'll keep an eye on that. Same thing for Texas, a lot of isolated storms here and some isolated storms out ahead of this. So that seems to be the mainstay of the flow going through the end of this week. And if we look at the accumulated rainfall from the high-res NAM, this is what it all looks like to get added up. Look at that system curling up here. There's the frontal boundary swiping through. And this could bring in a decent amount of rain, maybe filling in some of those gaps overall. A lot of isolated storms to the south, also in the northeast as well. Okay, from here, I want to pick it up with the pattern and just see if anything's changed, and especially start talking again about the risk, as we've been doing for several forecast videos on frost, right? So as we go forward here, that's the deep upper level low. It's cut off from the main flow, but it's there. And I shouldn't say cut off. It's just it's small. It's a short wave. And as it moves through, gets pulled into the low that goes over the Hudson Bay, and that's what's going to drag the front right through the Midwest. Now, we get a lot of warmth behind this. As you can see, the ridge opening up here. This is now Sunday into Monday. That low treks over the Canadian Maritimes. And then here it is again. These are these deeper disturbances that are supported by stuff coming out of the West Pacific that keep the pressure lower in this whole region. And that's what we're going to watch. Because as we go forward, September 3rd, 4th, 5th, as long as these keep showing up here, it's going to be really difficult to just drain a lot of cold air into this area. I'm talking like really cold. We'll get cool because the ridge is clearly back to the west. But I'm mostly concerned about this big dome of heat going farther west, which we don't see. So here we are out Saturday, September 7th, 8th, 9th. There's going to be a nice warm-up in the midsection of the country. That's going to happen because of this. But take a look at this elongated trough over here. That'll be important to watch for the risk of heavy rains in the south and southeast. But as it stands, I played all the way out there, and I still don't see any major ridges, like there is one here in the central part of the Canadian Prairie. I don't see them there. So this is why, even though you're going to see a cooler bit of a forecast in this area, I do not see the risk of any sort of large early frost all the way through the beginning of September. Did you notice what else we didn't see? We did not see the model generating any huge tropical systems during this time frame either, which has been a bit baffling given how conducive the environment has been to creating tropical systems. So let's go ahead and walk through our models here. Let's see if I got an update. There we go. Just got the 12Z in. This is the WPC 7-day forecast for total precipitation. This follows very nicely with what we just showed, with the low curling up, its front driving through the Midwest, the flow coming back around the backside. So look at this, Texas. I told you we'd talk more about you in a few moments. Watch this area. It looks as though the way the flow is going to be coming in here, we're going to get plenty of Gulf moisture getting very far to the west, and the chances for picking up some really good rains are high. Where we've talked about those drought areas farther to the east, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, models are being more aggressive on at least delivering a half-inch, and in some places over 1.5 inches of rainfall. But right along the Texas and Louisiana coast, I think that's our wettest spot in the country going forward. The NBM has a very similar forecast. That's it 7-day. Here's 10. 7 to 10. Look at the increase it has in the southeast as that elongated trough lives there well into next week. And then this is the artificial intelligence, 7 to 10. Overall, similar outlook for the southeast. From here, let's go look at the European model 7-day and the GFS 7-day. So differences, big differences, and I want to show you those differences. Look how much wetter the GFS is earlier down in the southeast. Again, you can see it here versus that. That's the European GFS. But then the European is so much wetter back into Texas, which honestly mimics more like what the WPC model was showing and the national blend of models. So just wanted to show you this across our cotton belt, what we're kind of seeing in terms of differences here. Let's go from there on to the 10-day. That's the 10-day Euro, and that's the 10-day GFS. And what's interesting is the 10-day European being so dry in this area, even though its ensemble members are wetter. And that's something I want to keep an eye out on overall. Okay, so I want to show you the models side by side. I don't do this all the time in summer because the features are too subtle. In winter, we do it every single day. But as we play this forward, there's your snow right in through that area. This was this morning, this afternoon, and this evening. And then we're going to watch that low curl up right here along the U.S.-Canada border, drop in the front Thursday night through here. And then as that front dives through, there's the decent chances of rain this weekend. Look at that. That's a great boundary on which we're putting rain down in areas that desperately need it. Now, this is not a slam dunk guarantee that we fill in all the holes we talked about with these maps earlier, but it is a chance of rain coming through. Now, the European model is going to leave more moisture on the back side of this getting into Texas than what the GFS is showing. There's still the front in both models coming through here, but it's just a different handling of the rainfall. The GFS, once we get out there to next Wednesday, Thursday, is also trying to generate some sort of tropical feature. The GFS is much more strong on it coming off of the Carolina coast. I'll keep an eye on that. But as I go forward out here till next Thursday and Friday, both models have a low here. Now, listen, if we had a huge ridge in Alaska, way up here, you know where this low would be? It'd be way down over the Great Lakes. It'd get shoved into this area. And on the back sides of these lows, where the high pressure builds in and the skies clear out, you get the colder air. But as it stands, these lows are not deep enough at this point to be generating major frost risk on the back side of it. Now, should that change, again, this is Friday the 6th, should that change, you better believe we're going to talk about it. But at this point, I just don't see it as being a major threat at that far. So let's go ahead and look at who's wetter and who's drier. This is the 10-day outlook on the chance of getting over an inch. So again, a lot of the Gulf Coast, and notice the ensembles are wetter down here than the operational runs. So just a key thing, and a lot of this is coming via just flow, not tropical storm or hurricane activity as we get out there to that first week of September. And if we look at the day 8 through 14, we're going to do 3 different maps. This is the CPC's outlook. So again, wetter down here, near normal back toward Colorado, drier across the northern tier of the United States. This is the European model, 7-day. And, it's a 7-day forecast, but it's day 8 through 14, so this is week 2. And then this is the GFS, which I'm so glad I've got these maps in better sync now. Look at that. That's good. That's good predictability, suggesting drier weather in this area. Now, again, just to make a point, I don't have major tropical development going on here. And the National Hurricane Center still is only given this potential for 20% chance of development out here over the next 7 days. As we look at it from the European model, I will make a point that there is the risk here of getting some sort of tropical low pressure going, but the probability of it even becoming a tropical depression is only at 50%. But that's what's going to help surge that moisture into Texas, maybe up toward Oklahoma as well. And we're just going to keep an eye on any sort of development risk out in the Atlantic, as I still expect activity to increase in the month of September. So just a reminder, we still have more than half the hurricane season to go, but we're waiting a lot on the atmosphere to get conducive to making big tropical systems as we go forward. This is what the newest European ensemble looks like for tropical low pressure development. And again, watching this area right here, just for the risk. This isn't deep lows, but there's still the risk of developing some kind of homegrown, deeper, low pressure right near the Gulf Coast, coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. All right, from there, let's talk a bit about temperatures. Today's highs shown here. As we just go forward, that cooler air dives into the northern plains. Heat comes into the northwest behind this. The heat stays in the Ohio Valley through parts of Friday into early Saturday even. But then the cooler air Sunday, Monday, That's when we drop these temperatures off behind the first of two lows that are going to roll through the eastern half of Canada. So there they go. So behind this, I mean, we've got some cool air coming in late this weekend and over the into early next week across a big section of the U.S. And I was just curious out there on Monday morning and Tuesday morning what those low temperatures were going to be. And right now the models are still in the 40s. So behind this low, because it's not deep enough, there's not a big enough ridge in Alaska, we're not looking at the risk of frost out of this at all. But still chilly. I mean, we're getting back into the 50s here and 40s next Monday and Tuesday, and we'll watch to see if that trend's any cooler than what you've got here. Day 5 through 10, that reflects that cooler air moving. But again, if all of this red was not just here but way up into Alaska, we'd have the change in the risk for frost. And this is day 10 through 15. So thankfully, we keep making lows in this area. So the flow's coming around, opening up these ridges. But I think we're going to see more normal temperatures for the start of September, maybe the first 10 days of September overall. And the European model sees the same thing. That's day 5 through 10, and this slides out to day 10 through 15. So again, I would just keep a very close eye on this area for any sort of risk of frost in this area. Okay? From there, let's come back to the tropics for a moment because, again, these conditions seem so ripe to making tropical systems. And La Nina continues to try. We're going to do more in-depth look at La Nina once we start the new month and get a little bit new information on it. But here we are at the end of a month, and we're just kind of trying to keep our sights set on some nearer-term weather features. But I'll just say this. We do have trades that are coming out of the east like they're supposed to. There's support from the big, subtropical ridge. This is what you typically see at the start of a good La Nina, stronger trade winds. But it's neat to also look here and see the Bermuda High. And I think it's the Bermuda High's influence that's going to keep this part of the southeast just supplied with moisture as the broad trough lives there. And then next week, that's why that week 2 forecast looked so wet. But thinking this through, I also want to ask, what might this be doing overall to the, to the setup of bringing in some moisture? So I had a couple of maps. Let's go find it. There we go. This is one that's quite interesting to me. It's a relative humidity map. We're at 925 millibars, which is low in the atmosphere. This is just, a few hundred feet off the surface. And where those stronger winds are coming through here, look at the Amazon. Look at part of the Cerrado. The humidity levels have been very, very low recently in this area. And what I think is interesting about that is how the forecast continues to show up quite dry. So we're not expecting anything at all except for this far northeastern corner of Brazil in terms of precipitation. And then down here in Buenos Aires over toward Cordoba, that area's got some chances of rain, but very dry in southern Brazil. If we look out there longer term, the models continue to do what I've been talking about for the last week or so, which is when we get out past mid-September, we see the monsoon starting in the model, meaning the last week of September, first week of October tends to open this corridor up to better pull on moisture versus where the dry air is I just showed you right now. But if we come back to this one more time, if we just look at this, as I'm thinking this through, this is just telling me that we need to be watching carefully where the moisture is going to be placed into the Gulf of Mexico and into the southeast. And that's, I think, one of the big reasons why when we look out there, this is a 46-day forecast from now all the way to October 12th. We really see wet conditions here, which means that Gulf of Mexico is a spot I'm going to watch very carefully for any tropical development. Meanwhile, with the flow not getting super amplified again, we do just see drier conditions throughout much of the central U.S. back toward the Rocky Mountains, around the Great Lakes. I mean, there's a lot of just drier, not dry, but drier air in these places as we press forward toward harvest for a big section of the country. So that'll be what I'm watching. And with that, I'll wrap it up, and I'll talk to you again back from home tomorrow morning before I go talk to a group of Brazilians up in Woodstock near Loyola's Campus Retreat Center. So you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll chat again in the morning. Thanks.